All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Linda. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with something that we hear about time and time again. Everything starts with the mouth. So I'd like to start our conversation there because to me, that's kind of a logical place. Have you explain how this phrase applies to your medical journey with fibromyalgia and how it relates to Airway?
Okay. Originally, I'm a nurse and I was a head nurse at a hospital. I started fainting. I fainted 10 times between Labor Day and the middle of October. And so then I had a bridge put on, and then the temporary bridge popped off and I had no fainting for the next 2 weeks. And then the permanent bridge went on and I started fainting again. And so then I went to the dentist. I said, I think the problem is this new bridge. And he says, oh, no, it's fine. So then I had the worst toothache I ever had in my whole life. And I'm at the dentist's office the next Sunday too. And he x-rays and I had an abscess underneath the bridge that he put on 2 weeks ago. So they drove through the bridge and I had to have a root canal. And then about 3 months later, so the fainting stopped after I had the root canal, but then 3 months later, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I couldn't sleep. And actually, when the bridge went on, I started biting my cheek, having difficulty swallowing pills. I didn't feel well. And 8 months later, I started fainting again. And instead of going to the doctors, because they ruled they had a Holter monitor and everything was fine there. But so I went to the dentist when I started fainting again. And what I had was another abscess underneath my bridge, underneath the root canal that I'd had done. So they did another root canal.
How is that even possible?
Well, you know what had happened. And so, I was just lucky. Normally once you have a root canal, you don't have any pain from that tooth.
Mm-hmm.
It's my fainting that really guided me to go back to the dentist. So I went, because I had 29 symptoms, and you can't go to a medical doctor for 29 symptoms.
Right.
I took my 29 symptoms on a piece of paper and I went to a naturopath. And when I went to the naturopath, I said, all this started with my teeth. And he says, well, it is your teeth. He says, your bridge is right here. Didn't open my mouth, knew exactly where it was. And that's because I had symptoms down the meridian from that tooth. So everybody is familiar with acupuncture, but those acupuncture lines actually run through the teeth. So he knew that tooth 13, I couldn't turn my head to the left. I had pain in my shoulder. I had pain in my elbow. I had tendonitis, carpal tunnel. I had pressure in my chest, and had panic attacks, which I'd never had before. I mean, I had managed 3 cardiac arrests at one time at the hospital. So I knew that I shouldn't be having panic attacks. And then I had sciatica, my balance was off. I come out with the wrong word when I spoke. And so I took that chart that the naturopath gave me and I took it to the dentist and I said, I'm pretty sure that there's something wrong with my bridge. And, they looked at me in the chair with my mouth open. So they said, nope, there's nothing wrong with your bridge. So I went to another dentist and I took the chart the naturopath gave me. And he said, no naturopath's going to tell me that there's something wrong with your teeth. Oh. So I left. And what I realized is if they had looked at my bite instead of just looking at me with my mouth open, they would have realized that I was in a crossbite and that was causing an airway problem for me. And that I also had TMJ, clicking in my jaw. So I couldn't get help. So I had actually signed up to go on a medical mission to Ecuador. I switched planes in Miami. And a couple got on late in the plane and I said I'd switch places with the man's wife that was next to me. So it was divine intervention that I sat next to this lady from Michigan.
Okay.
And we're talking about our daughters playing soccer. And she says, well, we just about lost our star soccer player. She had pain in her arm and her leg, but there was a dentist's daughter on the team. And he says, oh, I know what your problem is. Your bite's off. And I says, you know a dentist that knows this? And she says, yes. So she wrote me a letter, and I got it when I got home from my medical mission to Ecuador. And I called him and I went to see him. And the first thing he did was give me a mirror and ask me if he thought my bite looked right. I was in a cross bite. The top, really the space in your front teeth, top teeth should line up with the space in your bottom teeth. And it didn't. My jaw was, it was off. And he said to me, he put me in the chair and he looked at it. He says, your bridge isn't on right. It's sitting too close to your cheek. So when he took it off, all of a sudden I could turn my head again. My pain in my arm, my elbow, my sciatica.
You're kidding me.
Everything went away. Everything from that meridian went away.
Wow.
And so I thought.
Now, did you talk to him about this, what the naturopath had told you?
Yes, I did. And he knew about meridians. This is more of a naturopathic dentist.
Okay.
And he's a head, neck, and facial pain dentist. So he knew this. And so he knew right away what the problem was. And so then he told me that, so I had the symptoms down the meridian. They went away when he took the bridge off. But I had migraine headaches for 30 years, had difficulty sleeping. He says, you know what? We can get rid of your migraines. We'll put a splint to bring your jaw forward, and then your nerves and your blood vessels aren't caught behind your condyle, and then you'll be better. So the roads were really bad at that time going to Michigan. And so I found one head, neck, and facial pain dentist in London, Ontario, Dr. Brock Rondo. And I went to him and I wore a double splint on my bottom and top teeth. I couldn't take it off except to brush my teeth for 6 months. My bottom jaw came forward 7 millimeters.
Oh
All
my
of a sudden,
gosh.
my migraines were gone. I started sleeping better because when your bottom jaw comes forward, so does your tongue, and it opens up your airway.
Your airway, right.
Right? So it's an airway issue. So what I realized is fibromyalgia is a TMJ issue, an airway issue, and a meridian issue. And if you put them all together, you can explain every symptom that the person has.
Wow.
So I was blessed. God got me better. And then I started interviewing people so that I could help other people that had fibromyalgia. So the first lady that I helped was a lady that lived down the road from me. And this is a letter that she wrote to the London Free Press, that's in London, Ontario. And she wrote it 10 years after she got better, because originally I was sick in 95. I got better in 97, started interviewing people. This is the letter she wrote in 2008. She was helped in 1998.
Okay.
It says, patient remembers dentist's effort 10 years later. It said, words are never expressed enough for the people who do good in this world. 10 years ago this month, I went to Dr. Brock Rondo, a dentist in London. I was in terrible pain. I'd been in pain since 1967, was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. I was bedridden for 6 months and couldn't walk or sit. Every day I used to pray to die. Dr. Rondo and his staff listened to my cry for help. They carefully x-rayed and measured my jaw, and I wore a day and a nighttime splint. After persevering for 4.5 years, I was all out of pain. I'm pain-free today, and I can't thank him and his staff enough for listening to me. And she is the very first lady that I interviewed with fibromyalgia, and she got better.
That is amazing. And just so everybody knows, we'll talk about this a little more later. That's an excerpt from your book, The Fibromyalgia and TMJ Connection, which we'll put a link to in our show notes. And also Dr. Rondo is going to be on our show in a few weeks. So I'll make sure that we put a link for that as well once we do that interview.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an amazing man. And you know what? I send all of the people I interview to him, and the people are getting better. And, you know, he's initially, he really didn't know much about meridians, but I've been teaching him about meridians. He knew people's bite was off. He knew people had TMJ, but he wasn't familiar with the meridians. So I bought him a chart and I started teaching him about the meridians. So
And I'd like to jump into that a little bit because you mentioned that, and I've heard you mention this in other interviews. What is this dental meridian?
Well, what the dental meridian is, if you think of acupuncture, and people get acupuncture all the time there's 12 meridians down the body, that's a energy channel through the body. And that's the basis for acupuncture. It's a basis for reflexology, how reflexology can help. But what people weren't familiar with, except that naturopath I went to, is those energy channels actually go through the teeth. So my tooth number 13 was on the lung meridian. So, and it was on the meridian that went to my shoulder, my elbow, my wrist. It went to my back, it went to my lung, and it went to the big toe and to the breast. So if you look up online, it's called meridiantoothchart.com. You can find an interactive form of, if you hit a certain tooth, it'll tell you which meridian it is on. And as a nurse, I knew nothing about meridians till I went to see that naturopath. I'd never heard of them, really never really had any idea about it before until that happened to me. So the meridians, so people that have fibro, they have problems with the TMJ, then they have airway issues, that's why they can't sleep. And then they have meridian issues, but the meridian, depending which tooth hits first, when they bite down, depending which tooth hits first, are the symptoms that they have. So if you're hitting your back teeth first, you have more small bowel issues, you have more heart issues. If you're hitting your front teeth first, it's more Sjogren syndrome, it's more dry eyes, dry mouth, more bladder and urinary symptoms. And men that hit their front teeth first have more, they have more prostate issues. If you're hitting your eye teeth first, and that's when you're tapped down, that's the tooth you notice first, then they have blurred vision or problems with their eye. They have gallbladder, liver, and hip issues. And I've interviewed like well over 100 people. So when I interview them and they tap, I can tell them what their symptoms are. And they're just absolutely amazed to think that it's all related.
Well, and I can't be there. They may pick it up on the mic. I can't be the only one doing this while you're talking. I'm sitting here tapping, trying to figure out what hits first. That is amazing. And I will put the link to the Meridian Tooth Chart in our show notes as well, because that to me is just fascinating. So that explains, though, then why so many fibromyalgia patients also have airway issues, because it's that meridian, right? It's all.
Well, no, it's not just because of the meridian. Some of them, if it's 13, the lungs can be affected. That's the lung meridian. But most fibromyalgia people, they either have an overbite, their bottom jaw is too far back. And I thought I had an overbite, but so many people had an overbite, I didn't know it was abnormal. And some of the people have a high palate, a high upper palate. And so both ways, your tongue is blocking your airway. So it's the tongue blocking the airway that gives them the airway symptoms.
Okay. Got it. Okay. And I will also list this. Oh, go ahead.
So what Dr. Rondo does is he either gives them a splint to bring the bottom jaw forward, or he expands the upper palate to make more room for the tongue. Either way, their airway is going to be treated. Okay. And is that one of the, and then does it, if you happen to have fibromyalgia, then is it one of those things that if once the airway is treated in this case or most cases, does that then impact the fibromyalgia symptoms? Yes, definitely. So then, first of all, you have to have your jaw treated, the TMJ, so there's no more clicking anymore. And they can do that by sometimes bringing the jaw forward. But if you have a high palate or actually your bottom jaw is back, either way, your bottom jaw is too far back, and it's causing the airway and the TMJ problems.
Okay. Got it. Got it. And I've referenced it twice, a specific podcast that I'm thinking of that you did. So I'll make sure to put it in the notes because it was really amazing. But during this particular episode, you listed some symptoms that we don't typically hear about when you're assessing patients for fibromyalgia or TMJ or airway. Would you mind just running through some of what you look for when you're assessing a patient?
Okay. When I'm assessing a patient, I actually do a TMJ questionnaire. And I actually got that questionnaire from Dr. Rondo. That's the questionnaire that he would do in his office. And so people can have either headaches, they can have ringing in their ear, they can have tension in their jaw, they can have twitching in their eye. All of those things can be related to TMJ. Okay. There's a long list. You can find it on the internet, TMJ questionnaire, and actually people can do it themselves. And so there's the TMJ symptoms, and then I do an airway questionnaire, and I got that from a Dr. James Gary. He was an airway dentist that did a lot of research on the airway. So if you have airway issues, okay, you can have dry eyes, dry mouth in the morning, you can be snoring, you can be biting the side of your cheek, you can have difficulty swallowing, you can have being tired and exhausted. So there's actually a chapter in my book, and it gives you all of the airway questionnaire.
Okay.
So actually through my book, people can do the TMJ questionnaire, they can do the airway questionnaire, then they can tap their teeth together and do the meridian. And then it tells them the type of dentist that they would have to go to be assessed. I just guide people to somebody, a dentist that can assess them.
Okay.
So my goal is to get people to the right, because regular drill field dentists don't know anything about this.
No.
Nothing.
No, we're finding more and more out about that. So,
and the other really interesting thing is, I saw this little girl at my son's house.
and
this is Maya.
Okay.
And if you look at Maya, you can only see her 4 front teeth when she smiles. You don't see all the way back to her back teeth. And that tells me that she has a high palate.
Right.
So I looked at her, I talked to her aunt, and I said, I bet you she doesn't sleep well. I bet you she's all over the bed at night. I said, I bet you she snores. And I says, and I bet you she doesn't do well at school. And her aunt says, how do you know that? And I said, and I bet you she has a high palate.
And she did.
This is Maya's palate.
There it is. Wow.
Extremely narrow.
Mm-hmm.
So Maya's grandmother took her to Dr. Rondo. He's expanding. She's got it expanded now, and she's sleeping better. And now she's going to be having braces. But here's a picture of a girl that already got help. And look at the difference. If you look at this girl, look at the difference. She actually sick in the one picture, and she looks alive again once her palate's expanded. Why? Because she can now sleep better. And this is one of the patients that was helped by Dr. Rondo. So ADHD, if you look at, it's called Dr. Ben Marigalis, ADHD. He is the one that, he's got a YouTube video that says ADHD is really sleep deprivation. So you know what? If you can expand these kids' palate and then they're sleeping better, it's amazing how things improve. And it's not, it's not just Dr. Rondo that knows this. Dr. Dan Gold from Michigan knows it. Dr. Al Fonder, who wrote The Dental Physician, he's got it in his book. Unfortunately, dentists cannot they cannot advertise that they can help medical problems. And the reason being is they're worried for their license. That if they said they can help a medical problem, their licensing board can come back and say to them, well, you're not a doctor. How do you know that? And so consequently, it's the system that is preventing people from getting the help that they need. And these dentists advertising that they can help. Even kids that wet the bed when they're 8 or 9 years old, the most of those people are sleep deprived and they have narrow palates. And once they expand it, these dentists explain why that happened in their books. And, there's lack of oxygen going to the kidneys and the bladder. And these people just are incontinent at night. But a lot of these kids are small stature, and it's all because they don't sleep well at night. So the growth hormone is not released, and they're smaller in stature, the ones that wet the bed. So at least that's what I'm finding. But it's amazing stuff. And we just have to get the information out so parents realize that there's another option than pills. There's another option than giving them medication that's going to ruin their life, because those kids, when they're sleep deprived, they can't function properly.
Right. And we talked to Dr. Morales and some of the others about the fight or flight that happens. It's just why you see that late stage bedwetting, and we don't want to have to put them on meds if we can avoid it. And don't just pull teeth. Let's get to the root of it. If they want to pull teeth, say no, go find someone else and let's get a second opinion. Yeah, because you don't want to make it smaller.
Right. So what I will tell you is, in my day, when people had braces, they pulled teeth when they were crowded. And what I'll tell you, in my nursing class, we looked at the people with the narrow smile. They were the rich girls in our class, 2 of them. And when I asked them if they had teeth pulled, they had 4 teeth pulled each when they had their braces. It made their palate narrow. They both have autoimmune disorders. They both have sleep and airway problems. So yes, some dentists have actually created this problem. I mean, not because
not
they
intentionally. Yeah, they didn't know. Right.
But long term, I know from interviewing people that is the case.
Right. And that's another thing that we've talked to dentists about too, is, kind of to your point, they're the front lines. They're able to see these issues. And as more of them are starting to find out, this is what we learned in dental school wasn't exactly accurate when it came to Airway. Here's how we need to transition. When we spot the issue, we can't fix it, but we need to know who to send them to. Because kind of to your point, they quote aren't allowed to. So that kind of moves into something else that we rally a lot for, which is this holistic, comprehensive care of children and adults. They're all a team. Your pediatrician should be working with your dentist and your myofunctional therapist, and everybody should be together to support this child.
That's right. And what I'll tell you is, what I found is people that are tongue-tied, you need your tongue to go to the roof of your mouth to keep it flat. And if they're tongue-tied, they can't do that. And those are kids too that then are going to be labeled as ADHD only because they're not sleeping well. So, and I will tell you, I talked to Dr. Rondo. They didn't learn anything about airway in dental school. They only learned about drill-filled teeth. And in fact, one dentist told me he had half a day on TMJ, and all they learned was, okay, these are the symptoms that you refer to a TMJ dentist. So they don't know. And there's a lot of orthodontists. I have to tell you, I talked to Dr. Rondo Brock about this. I said, I saw a young lady that had her braces off a year ago. She had beautiful teeth. They were lined up beautiful. But the orthodontist left her with TMJ. They didn't treat the TMJ. They didn't bring the bottom jaw forward. So now this girl is in nursing school with migraine headaches 3 days a week. I called Brock. I said, why would they put the braces on and not address her jaw? And he says, because they don't know it. They don't know about it.
Right. And I think I say this every episode. We really should just rename this podcast, You Don't Know What You Don't Know.
That's right.
because
That
the
is
the 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 pediatricians and EMTs that have been on here, they weren't taught it. The dentists, they weren't taught it. The parents, we didn't know. So
no,
here we
right,
are collectively as a group going, oh wow.
right.
The train's left the station. How do we get it put back in and keep it from happening and then help the kids that are already out here?
Right. Well, I've been very fortunate. I worked with an airway, he's an airway dentist from
Mhm.
West Virginia. It's Dr. Felix Liao. His
Oh,
is
we
an,
love Dr. Liao.
okay. Well, I have worked with Dr. Liao. And in fact, Dr. Liao told them there's a fibromyalgia summit that's going on October the 5th in Houston. And Dr. Liao told them about me, and they called and asked if I would attend. So then I will be talking to dentists and doctors and chiropractors about what I'm doing and what I'm finding. Because I believe the reason that they have such a difficult time finding out all about fibro is the only person that would know is somebody that's gone through it like me.
Mm.
Because it's 3 different things. So how would they find that out? Like they don't. So Dr. Liao had me go to his dental conference, and I talked to the dentist there. And I also, it was really interesting. I want to tell you that, a lot of adults have airway problems. And I asked them why they have people take their dentures out at night. And they said, oh, because, that's what we're taught at school. It's for gum health. And I said, well, I
Okay.
want to tell you, there's a lady down the road from me. She lost her license. They said she's early dementia because she wasn't coming out with the wrong word when she talked.
Okay.
I said to her, do you sleep well? And her husband says, oh no, she's up half the night. She doesn't sleep well at all. And I said, well, you know what? When I interview people in their 20s, 30s, 50s, whatever, they all have problems finding their words because they're not sleeping well. I said, this is not from
Not dementia or anything. Right.
So I said to her, will you leave your dentures in at night for 1 week? And then I want to talk to you and find out what's happening. Well, 1 week later, she was sleeping through till 8 o'clock in the morning. She had no problems finding her words because she was sleeping better. And so I wrote a letter to the dentist, to the doctor, and I said, would you be willing to do a sleep study with her dentures in and her dentures out? I believe the reason that she can't find her words is because she's sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused.
Oh,
And
wow.
so she continued to lose her license, and there was nothing that we could do. But when I told this to the dentist at Dr. Liao's, they were going, oh my God, it was like a light bulb come on. This lady dentist from, she was from California. And
Mm-hmm.
she says, oh my God, how come we never thought of that? I said, you're trading their gum health for their airway. And she's going, oh my God, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
So she was going back to California to call her patients that have dentures to see if they'd leave them in and see what the effect was for them.
And that's just, that's case in point of, if you've heard, I'm sure you have, Matthew Walker talk about sleep and how important it is and how the cognitive impacts that it's having. And if you think of, yeah, and if you think about all these kids that we're not catching, it's bad enough for us, but they're having it for decades before adulthood. It just, I think you can impact your IQ up to 10 points. Not to
Right.
mention, as you mentioned, ADHD, they're going to get misdiagnosed with that. They're not going to do well in school. And they
Well,
could if we just can help their airway and help them sleep so that their
right.
body can restore.
That's right. Now, Dr. Liao probably, I don't know if he's mentioned this on his podcast, but what they told me is our jaws used to be larger. So centuries ago, the people they didn't have to have wisdom teeth out. They have beautiful teeth. They're lined up. They weren't crowded. Why? Because they had larger jaws. And the reason they had larger jaws is because the hunter-gatherers, they used their jaws more. And so they had breastfeeding for 2 or 3 years. Then they would chew on bones. They didn't have soothers. They'd let the kids chew on bones. And so the kids developed the muscles in their jaw, and their jaws developed more. And so that they were larger. And so
Right.
what they said, the reason it's smaller is because we're not breastfeeding, and even the ones that are breastfeeding, then we feed them soft food for a couple of years, and they never develop their jaw muscles, and therefore
Mhm.
their jaws are actual facial structure, and our whole jaw is smaller now than what it was 100 years ago. And
Mhm.
so our teeth are crowded. We're having to have wisdom teeth out, and all of these things are affecting our health.
Mhm. Mhm. And this is usually the point in the podcast when a bomb like this is dropped. I like to tell parents, everybody, let's take a collective breath. We didn't know. For all of us that thought we were doing great by making our own soft baby food because it was healthier, it's okay. Just deep breath. This is where we are now. Let's focus on, correcting because we didn't know.
No, and that's true. I mean,
Mhm.
my kids have problems, although it's really interesting. Obviously I learned this because my daughter is missing her lateral teeth, and she's also got 6 baby teeth with no adult teeth behind. It's congenital from a grandmother.
Okay.
And so she's got a narrow palate. So then I could get her palate expanded, and she went to Dr. Rondo, and so this has been a gift from God for me and for my whole family, really.
Mhm.
But people, this is our opportunity to educate parents, educate dentists, doctors, everybody, to say,
Everyone.
what? This isn't something, nobody, the doctors look after the head, the doctors look after anything below the neck. The regular dentists do your teeth, but if you don't have anybody that can look at the size of your mouth and whether or not you've got a high palate or your jaw's back, what happens is there's nobody to help them.
Mhm.
And that's where the problem lies. I mean, you just can't have one wonderful dentist like Brock Rondo.
Right. Right. And I will tell you, dentist after dentist that has been on here, Dr. Moralia, Dr. Boyd, Dr. Liao, just they all mention they're taught, let's look at the teeth. That's our focus. No, it's not. Let's start with the jaw. Let's look at the airway. I mean, it's the whole area, it's the whole cavity. And you have to
Right.
focus on it. And if you see something, send them to an ENT. Alert the pediatrician.
That's right. Now, Dr. Liao, he does a CAT scan.
Mhm.
They go to his office. I've sent people to him. And one lady had severe indigestion, had all these issues. And I sent her to Dr. Liao, and they did the CAT scan, and her airway was severely compromised.
Mm.
And no one else had ever told her that.
Because they
And
weren't
she's
looking at
from
it.
Canada going to Virginia.
Wow, just to see him. And yeah, I'll make sure I'll put the link to Dr. Liao's on here also. But Dr. Harrell does the same thing. He does the CBCT scan because again, and he and Dr. Liao, which I'll link both of those in the show notes, both show these amazing visuals where you can actually see, how the airway comes in versus, once they've expanded, they do the exact same person and wide
That's
open.
right. And the interesting thing is, I've worked with 4 dentists, and in my book, in the last chapter, I've got like 9 case studies from the dentist I worked with. But Dr. Liao and Dr. Garcia both help kids with Tourette's. Okay.
Mm.
So I thought, now how are they doing that? So I went on a Tourette's documentary so that I could see what these kids look like. Do you know
Okay.
that they all are narrow, just like Maya, the little girl that I saw? Every single one of them.
No, I had no
Every
idea.
I'm telling you, there was 10 kids on this documentary, and every single one of them was narrow, which means they've got a high palate. And I will send you the video from Dr. Garcia. He's a young boy. He had a crossbite, and he got rid of his Tourette's by making him a splint. So you know
Mm.
what a wonderful thing to give people with Tourette's, maybe an opportunity to at least go to somebody to see if
Right.
if they can have their palate expanded and if it will get rid of their symptoms. Because trigeminal nerve, all the nerves come through, you know,
The mouth.
the jaw. And it's amazing. Dr. Garcia and Dr. Liao help kids with Tourette's.
That
So
is mind-blowing.
I mean, it is mind-blowing, but you know what? If we don't get the information out there, how are people going to get help?
Exactly. Exactly. And so to that point, as a nurse, when you have a parent that's seen some of these symptoms and they're hitting these roadblocks, where do they go? How do you guide your patients or the people that you interview, especially if it's, children?
Well, I actually do presentations at libraries. I do presentations at ladies groups. And what I do, you don't need a referral to get into Dr. Rondo. So I just send them to Dr. Rondo. I said, he's got all the equipment to assess to see if he can help you. And so, but the response I've had is absolutely amazing. These people are getting better, and people are calling me and thanking me for everything I've done. And I said, don't thank me, you thank God. I didn't find you, he sent you to see me.
Yeah.
So it's not me. I was blessed to get better, and I was only sick for 2 years. And I will tell you, when I got better, when they took that bridge off, I come home and I said, honey, I'm so much better. And he's looked at me and he says, honey, your eyes look different. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, I can see the blue in your eyes now. So what that meant is I was in fight and flight. I knew that they were dilated. I thought it was from the pain I had. But what Dr. Dan Gold said, he said that, everybody looks at the sympathetic nervous system and being stressed. Doctors look at it as psychological. And Dr. Gold said, I just took away your structural and your dental stressors and your pupils went to normal. Yours was not psychological. Yours was dental. So I know it sounds unbelievable, but that information is in my book. And anybody, even parents with ADHD, they can do the Airway questionnaire in my book. And then they can look at Maya and look at if their kids look similar to Maya. And I've got a list of some dentists that are across the country that can look at Airway. They're not drill fill dentists. They're dentists that have gone and taken extra courses and have an understanding of what we're talking about.
Yep. And I'll also include, we have a list. It's an Airway dentist locator, and it also includes some myofunctional therapists from Airway Health Solutions, which is Dr. Moralia. So I'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well for parents, because
Moralia is amazing.
He is.
Listened to a lot of his. He's the one that did the YouTube video on ADHD,
which we'll include in the show notes as well.
Right, and he's done a lot of YouTube videos with Lauren, and
yes.
It's amazing what you can learn by listening to their podcasts. And, I thank them for everything that they're doing, because that's just another part of the puzzle that can get people the education to know what is possible.
Absolutely. And for those that don't know, we recently just launched the Parents Portal and the Clinicians Corner on our website. And the Clinicians Corner is co-branded, and the curriculum and everything comes from Airway Health Solutions, who we are now partners with, because that's part of the puzzle piece. We can educate and help parents, but we need help educating the medical community, and they are our partners to make sure that we are doing that together. And it's a phenomenal partnership. Yeah, we're very, very blessed to be coming alongside them to do that. So I'll include links to that as well in our show notes for everyone.
Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Because
it is
really,
wonderful.
All of it is education. All of it is information out. And you know what? I am so passionate. My goal is to help 1 million people. And I need help from everybody to be able to do that. And I'd love to be on the Good Morning America or Today Show, anything to get the information out, because this is countrywide. This is a
Yeah, it's
problem
huge.
countrywide.
Actually, it's more than country, it's global. There's 400
That's
million
true.
children that, we're trying to help. And, at CAF, we're focused on children. Well, those children become adults. So just the statistics of how many adults are walking around with these issues is mind blowing.
Right. And if you
So
look
what a
at
difference we could make.
Gerald Simons,
Yes, Dr. Simmons is on our board. Yes.
Well, the wonderful thing is at my presentation, I show his video, The Misfit Mouth.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about Johnny that had ADHD, and then he had teeth pulled, and then he became bipolar. And what I'll tell you, I measure people's upper palate when I do an assessment. And what I will tell you is I've only had 4, but the bipolar people, I could only get half a cotton roll in. They were the narrowest of anybody I measured, that I measured. So now, wouldn't it be wonderful if they didn't, research on this and found that really what it was is they're sleep deprived too?
Wouldn't that be amazing? At least if we just get them some kind of relief.
Right.
And not a complete cure.
If they had their palate expanded, how many, even if they did 5 people and expanded their palate and then looked at it and looked at what is the response, some of these people don't have the money to get fixed because they're not able to work, or they've got airway problems, they can't sleep, and therefore they can't work. And if they could do a research study, that would be so amazing to think that, there's so many disease processes that are related to this.
Yes.
It's almost mind-boggling.
It really is. I mean, think of the impact we could have on the entire health community, just globally.
We could do this just being lay people, just being lay people and getting it out. I mean, people come to me every day that I interview them for free. I've been blessed, and I feel that I can bless other people. But I have to tell you, consistently, I can tell people what their symptoms are, whether they have TMJ, whether they have airway issues, and people leave here almost crying with joy.
Understandably.
It's
absolutely understandable.
That's right.
It is. And this seems like a good time to mention too, by the way, that for parents, we have our first ever parent town hall that we're co-hosting with Dr. Moralia and Lauren at Airway Health Solutions. I will put the link in our show notes. It is on November 8th. It is virtual, so all parents are welcome, and we're asking people to submit their questions ahead of time. And then also, I know you're going to be a part of the Airway Palooza event in New Orleans, which is in March 2024, and I'll make sure to put a link in there. And dentist, myofunctional therapist, pediatricians, anyone that's working with children, and we invite you to come to that event as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you stop by our booth, we will have your book along with a few others. We have people that they can talk to. So it's a huge event. It's a great learning opportunity for the entire medical world.
And that's where it starts. It all starts with education. It all starts with getting the information out. And I would really like to approach the Minister of Health in Canada, because with our healthcare system being paid for by the government, they would save so much money if that's what they did. So that's really, that's where my goal is. And I'm going through my member of parliament, and there's enough people that I've helped that are going to Dr. Rondo. I mean, I send him hundreds of people. And once they start to get better, we can get a group and we can go there and we can make a difference for everybody else in this world. And get some research done and come up with solutions that no one else has really thought of. Well, except to Dr. Rondo, of course.
Well, yeah, except and Dr. Liao and Harold. Yes. Yep.
Now,
the ones that are in the know.
Liao, he he got me invited to the Fibromyalgia Summit in Houston on October the 5th. I'm going.
Right.
So they wanted me to go to
Which we'll include
collaborate
the
on
link
that.
there.
And that's, you know, what an opportunity. And that people, you know, I will read you what Dr. Liao put in my book as a testimony. Dr. Liao wrote, as a nurse, Linda Harris has more training on TMJ, airway, and head, jaw, and neck alignment than nearly all doctors and dentists. Her extensive knowledge plus her TLC heart makes Linda Harris an angel among humans. And that's written by Dr. Liao. And I've got other ones from other dentists. Dr. Rondo did the foreword for my book. I've had an opportunity, you know, I come from a little village, and I've had an opportunity to meet 4 of the most amazing dentists ever. And I am so blessed. And, you know, they're all willing to listen to what I have to say, which really, you know, not a lot of other professionals, they would not be listening to a nurse, I'll tell you that. But
well, I've had other dentists and podcasts mention that there are others in the medical community that won't even listen to a dentist. So this is not a message that everybody is totally open to, because again, it's not what they were taught. So it's time to just change the conversation and let's reset and, you know, play from the same playbook. Everyone in the entire medical community.
Well, the interesting thing is I used to put doctors at the healthcare pyramid at the top. Now, I now put a dentist and a chiropractor at the top. And what I realized is, being a nurse, that we really treated symptoms. We really never, ever looked for the cause of what the problem was.
Yep. But again, let's go back to that. Do it as a group, right? Let's do this holistically.
Absolutely. And that's what's going to be so wonderful when I go to Houston, is because they're all professionals. There's surgeons, there's chiropractors, there's dentists, and now there's going to be a nurse.
As it should be. I love that.
That's right.
So at the end of every episode, I always like to hand it back to the guest, because you are the experts and that's what people are here to hear. What would you like? What's the last word or message that you would like to leave with parents?
That there is help out there. It's researching and finding out for yourself that there is treatment for your kids other than from a doctor. And the more you research, the more you're going to find out. You're going to see videos from Dr. Moralia?
Moralia.
And you're going to be able to educate yourself to realize who it is that you should be going to get help for your children. The sad part of it is I went to the Board of Education, I went to the schools, I went to the teachers, anything to try to find out, how could I find out about helping parents? And they said they can't get involved, that's the way it is. And you know what? So now I advertise, and I have all sorts of people out there telling other people about what I'm doing. And you know what? The more we get kids helped, the more they're going to tell other parents, and we're going to get a whole lot of people help. And then it's going to become a normal thing to look at kids' palates, to look at their tongue ties, to look at what does the roof of their mouth, what's it like? So we can get them help. You know, who wants to be ADHD for their whole life when there's a solution?
Or even worse, maybe you're ADHD now, and as you progress, as Dr. Harrell and some of the others have pointed out, it'll turn into a cardiac issue or early dementia or something that could have been avoided.
You know what? You are absolutely right about that. Absolutely. And, you know, is this the answer to some of our dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that? Like, who knows? But we won't be able to tell unless we do the research to find out.
Right.
So my goal is get that million people helped and make a difference in this world, which is basically what we all should be doing, is helping one another.
Very well said. I agree. Thank you so much for being on today, Linda. I 100% appreciate everything you're doing and the information that you shared today. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very, very welcome. We will help people together.
Yes, we will.